Have you ever wondered how they do it? Behind every great piece of art is a story, a person with experience, skills, and prized creative secrets. We've convinced some of Malta's most prominent contemporary artists to give us an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at the making of their work, and to open up their process as they bring new original art to life. The Open Art Studio series offers a rare glimpse into how art is made, and is dedicated to art lovers, artists, and aspiring artists alike. The historic town of Mellieha in the north of Malta sits high on a hill, overlooking the country's largest sandy beach. I'm Laura Swale, and I've come to Mellieha Bay to meet with a local painter who grew up here. Maltese artist Debbie Bonello is best known for her plein-air landscapes and seascapes in oils, inspired in no small part by the scenic coastline of her hometown. An art tutor by profession, when her two sons grew up, Debbie returned to painting full-time and has been a prolific painter ever since, exhibiting widely and quickly making a name for herself. As a plein-air artist, Debbie typically works outdoors, and she's here today to create her next work of art. She'll be talking us through her process as she paints Mellieha's most distinctive landmark, the parish church.
Well, I think it started at a very young age. I always remember myself with a small sketchbook and drawing, many things. I'm not sure why I like painting landscapes, but they're like our background, where we live. So, and I find them very interesting in general to paint and try to capture not only the beauty, sometimes the ugly too. I mean, this is not how I remember Mellieha when I was younger. It all of a sudden got built up.
Hello.
Hi, Laura. Hi.
How's it going?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
Yes,
so you're all set up?
Yep.
On location on the beach.
That's
Is
right.
this how you always work?
No, I try to vary my work a lot. I work outdoors and plein air, like today, or in my studio. I like doing both.
And how do you actually choose the locations where you paint?
It depends. The subject has to be an interesting one to begin with. But sometimes, because I'm outdoors, it depends on the weather. So if it's a very windy day, I might have to rethink the location, which has happened before.
Okay, so we're here in Mellieha today. Why have you chosen this place?
Primarily because I have a soft spot to this village. This is where I was raised as a child, so I grew up here. But also, being here, what I'm painting is the church today, so it's like an obvious focal point. And that should make a good composition.
And so, how do you start? What are you going to do first?
Well, normally I do some sketches in pencil, just quick ones, and then decide on the composition and then move on with the paints. So I'll go get my sketchbook.
I'll let you get on with it. So you've got 4 or 5 sketches there. Why is this part so critical to your planning, and which one have you chosen?
Well, as I sketch, it's like a thinking process of where I'm going to put my focal point, in this case, the church. I think I'm going to choose this sketch here because the church is on the top right-hand corner of the space, and it makes it look very dominant, and I could play a bit also with the lines leading onto it.
A lot of artists work according to different rules, rule of thirds. You've mentioned focal point, we've got foreground, background. Are those things that are important when you're planning?
Yes, very.
Yeah?
It's good to know, what makes an effective painting. It started to come a bit more intuitively as the more you paint, it comes almost naturally. But yes, those are things that one should consider, I think, before planning any sort of work.
And this one that you've chosen, that's got all of those things within that composition?
There's also a bit of the sky, which today there's no interest in it. There's no clouds that might make it a bit more interesting. But that would be a good balance with, you know, the effects I will probably put down here.
Ah, so it's contrast. You've got empty space versus full space.
That's right. And that also contributes to a good painting, I think.
So what happens next?
Well, next is I will start mixing paint, and normally I like to start straight away on the canvas, which is called alla prima, meaning I don't sketch before, because now it's all planned in my head, and then I'll just, you know, get on with it.
So tell me a little bit about your equipment and the kind of paints that you're using.
Okay, so basically for plein-air, I prefer to use water-based oils, which basically you can mix with water as you build up your painting. And I find that's great for this sort of painting outdoors because they don't dry so quickly, like acrylics would, for example, although some people might prefer to use acrylics. But for me, it's a great medium that now I'm very confident and comfortable with because I use them on a daily basis.
So you, they take long enough to dry that you have time to still work with them.
Yes, that's right. You can, you know, remove some paint if there's, if need be, or add more. So very versatile, I think. Yeah.
And you can use water instead of solvents.
That's right. So you avoid the smells, which tend to give me a headache anyway. So yeah.
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 Okay, so you've had to move your canvas a little bit because the shadows are changing and our shade is this tree above us and the sun's climbing high. So you're about to transfer your drawing to the canvas. How do you do that?
I don't sketch again because it's been sketched here and I know in my head what I'm going to be doing. So, so that's how I begin normally a painting.
So alla prima means starting with paint and not pencil?
Yes, directly on the canvas. Let's begin.
So when did you first become interested in painting?
So it started a long time ago, I would say. And then eventually I've been painting steadily for the past 5 years. And now it's a lifestyle.
Because this is your area, isn't it? Mellieha.
Mellieha is, yes. Well, I don't live here anymore, but any excuse I have, I come, visit my parents, visit my sister, and any other relatives. So, yes, I come here as often as I can.
You're doing really well, Debbie. It's getting really hot here. Tell us what you're doing.
Well, basically, I'm just blocking in, you know, basic shapes, so I lock the composition in, and then it's a gradual build-up of foreground and background.
So when you say blocking in, you mean you're putting the large areas of colour in first?
Yes,
much.
More or less, yes.
Yeah.
And then just build up. And one of the tricks is knowing when to stop, not to overdo it. And I like to paint in a way where you have the impression of a place. So I won't be going into a lot of detail, but hopefully enough to make a lovely painting.
So for now, it's the big shapes.
It's a big shape for now, and I, you know, move color around and about to make sense of it all.
And I notice you're putting a lot of water on the canvas there.
I love splashing water on. Yes.
And what does that do? Is that to create drips? Or?
It creates an interesting texture sometimes. It also blends color nicely together. So it's a bit of both, yeah. And obviously certain key elements have to be there. Like in this case, the church of Mellieha is there, so it has to look like the church of Mellieha, not like the Mosta church, for example. But, you know, I build it slowly and trying to keep in mind how I normally paint. And that happens, I think, with a lot of practice, and you develop certain brushwork and certain looseness, and that will become almost like your visual language.
Your handwriting?
Almost like my handwriting, but my paint writing, is that a word?
So your brushwork is very loose, it's very painterly, but I can see now that you're actually working with a palette knife.
That's right.
I wasn't expecting that.
I like it. I like using the palette knife quite often. It helps giving certain edges, certain sharpness that a brush might not offer at times. So yes, I use working both. I use brushes, various different size of brushes, and also a palette. And it does create a lot of texture, so probably I'll be using it a bit more in the foreground, because over here, if I do, it will create that illusion of depth.
So texture for depth in the foreground, but not the background.
Yes, because otherwise your painting will end up looking very flat.
How are you getting on?
Okay, I blocked the main shapes and created a movement which I quite like. But now I really need to focus on the focal point, so I'll be dedicating some time to the church. I'll be working on that for a bit and then decide what to do, because that will change the whole dynamics of the painting.
So I know that you normally finish everything on location. You're a purist, but it's the middle of July here. It's 33 degrees. It's getting very late, so we've made an executive decision to finish off at the studio.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, I think so too. The heat is just too much, and it's best to move on in the studio. It's not something I normally do, but in certain cases, why not? We'll carry it on in the studio. Yeah. Okay.
So we survived the midday sun and we're back at your studio. So how do you draw attention to your focal point? What are your tricks and tips?
Okay, well, in this case, what I did is all these lines help create a certain movement, which when you look at it as a whole, automatically your eye is drawn onto, this section here. This bit of color as well helps. There's a shade of blue here that's a bit darker, so that helps as well with the whole thing. There's also, if you notice, some, the lines getting a bit from like, a bigger space here, getting smaller, and that also helps in drawing your eye onto the church.
Do you have any words of advice or inspiration for other artists who might want to have a stab at landscape painting?
I think painting is like anything else, if one wants to become good at it, all one has to do is practice. Whether it's from photo, whether it's painting outdoors like we did this, but I think a small sketch or a painting every day or every other day, whatever, it really does help.
Is it a better form of practice to work from life or from photographs, would you say?
I think they're both important, but what plein-air offers is the light that you get once you're on location. It's very hard to capture it, even from a photo. So, and just being there is part of the fun, unless it's windy or, very hot like it was today. But yes, painting is all about hand-eye coordination. And so, yes, if you do that, I think one can see improvement.
The series is brought to you by Allura. Allura works with leading local artists to showcase outstanding art and to show you what goes into making it. For original paintings by some of Malta's most sought-after artists, visit the Allura Art Collection at www.alluraart.com.